Well, hello everyone. I have to figure out how Lee made a longer intro there. I only have the 30-second generic one, and it might be something you have to have the bigger subscription with. Hey, Ian, good to see you, buddy. So it's Tuesday night. Usually try to do a live stream when we can. Just to let you know, I was right. If you didn't see it in the No Life Beekeeping Facebook group, we were halfway joking with Alex about calling his honey the Creamy Dreamy Honey Company. Well, company has stolen that idea. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Let's see. There we go. Creamy Dreamy. Apparently they've got peach, banana, coconut, lemon meringue, whatever that is, stracciatella, and vanilla. So yeah, they've used my Creamy Dreamy brand. I wish they would have paid me for it, but they didn't. So, he missed the boat. Missed the boat on it about his creamed honey. So there you go. So hopefully everybody's doing good. Hey Ed, good to see you. Man, we got a lot of people in here. We got Ian Stepler, we got Stuffy, we got Peabody's Apiary, Keith Spillman, Mike Tanguay, Roy. Hey Roy, good to see you. Let's see. Am I missing anybody? Don't want to miss anybody. And Randy, the Tar Heel Beekeeper. Good to see everybody, man. I'm tell you what, this getting up at 1 in the morning kind of sucks when it comes to doing live streams, because no matter what I do, I feel like I should be asleep right now. But at any rate, we're here. Actually moved my. Whoop, that's weird. I actually moved my new product box out of here, off my thing here, so I can't show it to you. But a couple new products on the website. Go check them out. Obviously, if you watch the stream, you get 10% off using code STREAM10 on anything on there. So if you feel like you need to get something, just check it out. No worries on that. Hey, Dean, good to see you. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things to where it rained most of the week this week here, and so far, the last several days it's been kind of rainy. Today was nice, but I was just beat. So went ahead and did not do anything in the bees today, but they should be all fed up, and there's really no need to go in them at the moment. So we're just letting them ride and try to keep them fed up. They're always fed up with me, but fed on the colony standpoint. So the link should be pinned right up there in the chat box if anybody's interested in coming in. Maybe we'll get a Charlie sighting. I know Brad has a meeting this evening, so he probably will not make it at all. But anyway, just hanging out and getting ready for the holidays, a couple weeks away. Hey, Jack and Danae. Hey, Grayson, we got a couple weeks till Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody's getting their bees ready and getting ready for the holidays, and getting everything ready to go. I'm going broke. You and me both. James, work all week and still broke at the end of the week. That's something else. Hey, Link, good to see you. We got to get in a full house. Well, we got 34 at the moment, and it'll creep up probably in the 90 to 100. Alex, you missed out. I told you. I told you a year and a half ago, Creamy Dreamy Honey Company. Now somebody stole it. Just what you need. Yeah, I don't have the money to buy 1,200 colonies. Doug, I wish I did. I would move in a minute, man. Move in a minute. So, see, I might wash 12 hives, zeros 1 month after Apitalis. outstanding. I still have about, I don't know, 6 cases of Appy tablets, I believe, out there. We got Todd all bundled up for the winter there. Where are you at, in Alaska?
Ha! No, it was cold this evening.
Cold? Was it like 75?
It is. What the heck is it? There's something on my screen. No, I don't think it got out of the 50s today.
Yeah, it's 57 here right now. So
yeah, actually, it's starting to get warm. I was out moving boxes.
Is that a Carhartt vest?
Yeah,
I've got that exact same vest. Very nice.
Yeah, they're very nice. Very warm.
It's not Canadian warm, but it's like Southern California and South Carolina warm.
Yeah.
It's all we need.
Yeah. Oh man. Boy, all I could say is what an S show around here.
Really?
Yeah.
What's going on?
It rains, it pours. So, I had yesterday off, right?
Yep.
And we had this.
Oh, wait a minute. You had Veterans Day off?
Yeah.
All the veterans were working. Everybody else was off.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, veterans. So, I had a 3-day weekend, and Saturday I went out there and bumped around. There's not a whole bunch left to do. I had a couple of boxes that I had sprayed the hygienic boost on, and I had stacked them up like in my videos. So I thought, oh, you know what? Time to go into the back of the house because I can't store anything out there right now. So, I've been transporting some boxes home. I get to like the third one in the stack. And mind you, there's nothing underneath. It's wide open underneath. It's on this stand.
Right.
A freaking mouse jumps out of there. He jumped about 3 feet in the air. He jumped right over me. And then I
hope you had your Depends on.
It did kind of scare me. But it suddenly turned into frustration because then I looked down and I saw just in between each frame all of the ground up wax that this mouse has gone through to try to make a.
So you saved it from the wax moss, but not the mice.
Yeah. So that spray does not repel mice.
36 degrees and snowing in Wyoming.
Oh, that's shorts weather for Brad.
Brad will come pick you up for the airport in that kind of weather in shorts.
So that was Saturday. Sunday found another one. I've been out there 7 or 8 years now. I've never seen a field mouse ever.
So just get you some rubber snakes and put them under there. I wonder if that would deter them. The snake. Look.
I don't know. Well, I'm not using that stand anymore this year. But then yesterday we had this gust front blow in, and it was supposed to rain, which it did. I think it rained a quarter, half inch of rain, which is nice. We need it. Yeah, except the wind. The wind had to be ripping around 50 miles an hour. So I thought, oh man, I've got some, I just want to go make sure nothing's like falling over. So I drive out there. Sure enough, had another one that
dumped over.
When it rains, it pours. And that was a triple. I left one as a triple because this one is just a brood factory, and I'll monitor it in the next couple of weeks and break it down. But I was like, oh man, Mother Nature broke it down for me. So I don't know if there's a queen in there. I put it back together. Who knows? And that was in the evening. I'd actually talked to Brian in the afternoon.
And Todd's going to think it's a fake snake and pick up the wrong one.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it just went through my mind. First of all, I just said I'd never seen a field mouse out there. Second thing I'm going to say is I've never seen a snake out there. So there you go.
Seen them. Hey, you want to get the crap scared out of you? Try to go to your front door and open the storm door, and there's a snake on top of it that falls down on the ground.
Was it a black snake?
Yeah, black snake.
I had one of those in Missouri do that to me. Yeah, I checked the spider webs out on the top of the porch.
That wasn't the only snake. There was a snake in my underwear after that. It scared me.
A brown
scared the mess out of me.
Hey, oh damn, what the heck was I just gonna say? Oh crap, it'll hit me in a minute.
Let's see. Hey, so sting that like button on the way in, guys, if you don't mind. Helps out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, as far as beekeeping right now here, there's really not much to do. I mean, is there work to do? Sure. I could be taking frames that are, bad and pressure washing them off and getting them ready for wax and all that stuff, which probably what I should be doing, but I haven't. It'll be one of those things that, oh, wow, I need to start getting some boxes on. I better get these cleaned up and waxed, right? That's what's going to end up happening. I'm pretty sure. Happens every year, so why would this year be any different? But this year, since we're getting, towards the end of it, actually, man, this year has just been so crazy. I mean, if you look back, if you take a minute and look back, we'll just start with Brad. I mean, Brad decimated. Bee Yard was decimated, and through the help of people on the channel and help his friends in Canada, and several people got him back up and running, and he had a good honey year. I mean, comparable to last year, right, when he was full going. So that's good. It's next month, actually a month from today. Today has been 11 months since my mother passed during the middle of the live stream, right? I had to get up and leave the live stream. So that was 11 months ago today, and it seems like it was yesterday. Beekeeping wise, tried a bunch of stuff this year, a bunch of different things. And has it benefited me more than any other year? I have to say no. I mean, not to say that individually things didn't work. It's just overall, I'm at the same spot I was this time last year or year before, 23, right? So, so we made some changes, right? Moved some bees out to the out yard, got some bees here. Gonna try to do that a little bit differently. So we'll see what happens with that. So, you just don't know year to year. And, when you've been in it 6 years or so, you've only done everything 6 times, right? So I isn't it Ian, or who is it? Ed? Is it Mr. Ed, or is it Ian? Somebody says they have to do it like 3 years in a row. Or is Joey? Joey says that, right? He's got to do something 3 times in a row to know if it works. The problem is, I think a lot of times we change multiple things, and those multiple things, it's hard to nail down what exactly made the difference. Speaking of making a difference, it's Ian Stepler.
Yeah, making a difference.
How you doing, Ian?
Oh, good. Very good. I just jumped through the shower. Yeah. And then I turned on and, oh, you're on. I haven't seen you on for a while, Bob.
I was on last week for a little while during the election, and was kind of watching returns on one channel and doing a bee chat on the other.
You guys will be overwhelmed. I bet you're still overwhelmed with the election and how everything. It seemed pretty intense up here with everything on the news and just.
Yeah, it's
very charged.
Yeah, it's actually, I thought it would be worse than it is.
Yeah, me too.
I thought there'd be a whole bunch more static than there is. I think they're still licking their wounds at the moment, and then when everything takes its change, in January, then I think the fight will be on again.
Okay. But all I'm hearing on the media up here, like CBC's leftist, it's just all whining and making excuses and stuff. I just turn everything off.
I try to do that, but some of it's just too funny.
It is. It's really hilarious.
I mean, I'll tell you what, You better hope Polyev doesn't move to the States, right? Because if he moves to the States and takes up residency, I'd vote for that dude.
Who?
Isn't he the Conservative Party leader?
Pierre Polyev, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That
You know
dude's
what? I was
amazing.
listening to, I think it was Charlie's, and Brad was on, and they started talking politics, and Brad said, "Don't talk politics." So sorry, I brought politics to your channel. I was shut up.
Oh,
Didn't mean to do
that's
that.
fine. I just like that video when he's sitting there eating the apple, and the reporter's asking him questions, and he's just eating an apple like he's out on in the playground, right?
Yeah.
Still just chewing and talking at the same time. He doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
We have our politics up here, but not supercharged as you guys. Boy, you guys are right in the middle of it. I don't think, like, I turned on some American television, and all you guys, like, all the advertisements were these ridiculous campaign ads. It was too much for me. I turned it off.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't tell at the end of it. I couldn't tell whether, like, I kind of closed my eyes and tried to determine, is that Democrat or a Republican ad, and I couldn't tell the difference between the two sometimes.
Yeah,
you open the mailbox every day, and there's those mailers, for months, like 3 months, mail from
Mine doesn't even make it back in the house. I walk past the bin and drop it in as I go in the house. So
that's what I do.
Waste of money, but whatever. It is what it is. And
hey, Bob, I remember what I was going to say or ask. So we were talking about the snake and the rat and stuff. Have you found a monkey run around the woods yet?
No, they're here somewhere in South Carolina. I don't know what 40. How does 43 monkeys get away?
43. So the guy at the lab, I guess apparently after he fed them, he didn't lock the gate correctly or something. Or
oh shoot!
But were they just like running? Were they just in like one big cage? And I mean, you got one job.
Yeah,
unlock the monkeys and lock the monkeys.
One job.
One job. It's that.
But did you see that video? The guy had the camera pointed in the woods, and you could see them all. There was a whole
castle of monkeys, a whole barrel of monkeys.
Yeah,
we can go for days. Yeah.
It was crazy. It looked like little mini Sasquatches running through the woods.
Oh, they'll never catch them all. There's no way.
No.
We'll have monkeys. Now we have indigenous monkeys to South Carolina.
Added to the list, right?
Right. They'll be like, something's killing my honeybees, and the monkeys sitting there.
Yeah, they're sitting there eating them.
picking bees off each other.
Or you go out there in the middle of the night, you hear something, you go out there with the flashlight, and there's a monkey pulling up frames looking at through your hives.
Yeah,
yeah, that's my apiary with all my kid workers. There's a bunch of monkeys. Hope I shouldn't say that too loud because I got.
So how's the weather there now? Is it getting cold or?
Well, for us it's quite mild. We're above freezing yet. We haven't had we've had frosts, but nothing to freeze the ground at all. And at the daytime temperature was around 12 today, I think it was. So I have the bees inside, and the cooler is cranked, so I'm keeping them nice and chilled. But this is I shouldn't say it's unusual weather, because we do get warm weather like this that does come through, but it just doesn't feel natural. Usually we are under a blanket of, like, we're gonna have rain maybe tomorrow. That should be snow. We should have a foot of snow already.
So this time of year, man, I wouldn't want to be your electric bill with that new AC unit.
It's going. Yeah, it's going. I have it turned on through the warm days, and then when I have the cooler days, I turn it off and just use the forced air. So whatever I can maintain that 4 to 5 degrees. If it's outside air, I'll use that. But if it's not, I've been using a lot of the refrigeration. But that's why I bought it, so I could get the bees in a little bit sooner, just to manage my workload a bit. And I'm glad that, yeah. Well, except for the bill, it's pretty expensive. But I'm also going to use it like throughout the winter when we have those mild swings. I'm going to be able to just turn that on instead of fretting over overheated sheds. And later in the spring, when we have those false starts, I'm going to be able to keep them inside during that first false start, and maybe that'll be easier on the bees. Your
last video, I was going to make the comment, but I didn't. And now I'm I'm perplexed. I don't know if you're more excited getting the bees out in the spring or more excited putting the bees in for the winter now. So I
It's
have no
equal excitement. It's equal excitement. He's
idea.
excited to get it going, but he's damn excited to be done with that work for the year, probably.
Oh, I'm so tired. I'm very tired. A fall like this, like we have the bees away, the harvest is done, the land work is done, but we have an open fall. This is what I call an open fall. So we're out on the land working to improve, cleaning up the corners, taking out bush. This is a fall like this is really hard in old yards and tree lines and that, because farmers just have nothing to do. They have a high-o and they go and start improving the land, right? We can't do that when it's frozen solid or if we got a million other jobs to do. So that's what I'm doing now. We've just transitioned from my job as a beekeeper, and then I was helping in the grain farm, and all that's all tidied up. Now I'm on the high hole clearing bush. So just one. I'm waiting for the snow to fall. I'm getting tired.
I didn't see, but did you have a final count on how much honey you produced this year yet?
Yeah, I won't tell you my total number, but I'll tell you my average number. So if let's say, I think I was 1,850 colonies in the middle of summer. So I use that number as my production number. And if I took my nukes, and if I said 100 pounds of honey per nuke, I took that away, and then my average on the production colonies was 210 pounds a hive. So I did pretty well.
You got 100 pounds of honey on average from a nuke?
Yeah, I brought a lot of.
Damn you, Ian Stepler.
I actually had a pretty good year. I lost maybe my production colonies. I lost about 20 to 25% of them because I didn't requeen. I think there's lots of swarming and queen replacement, and something happened. So I had trouble with a bit of a summer loss. But my nukes, I didn't see any of that. Like I only had like a summer loss with my nukes. So I averaged only a 10% call or 11% call through the summer. So I just counted my colonies. They're in the shed, and I just walked the aisle and counted them 3 times. I kept coming up with a different number, but I have just about 1,700 colonies in there right now, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Wow,
and
that's a pretty good total with the average you.
What's an average winter loss? Like you put in 1,700. What are you expecting to pull out in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, with mites, like we're having a lot of Pheromone problems up here. So I'm not sure what an average loss would be. If we took, let's pretend that we had that magic bullet that killed the Pheromones. So our winter loss would be around that 10 to 15% in that area. Because we have drone layers and you have colonies you put in that maybe shouldn't have put in.
Still a couple hundred colonies though.
Yeah. So, and I think, like knock on wood, I think I have controlled my mites. And I think the yards that maybe fell victim to the Pheromones have already, dwindled, and they can see those. So I think I have 2 yards that suffered from Pheromone, maybe 3, because I can see those clusters just going like that, right? As the mites the mites kill the cluster. And the damage was done about a month ago. But the rest are hanging nice and steady and tight. So I think I got it. I think I have it this winter. So I'm happy with the way. And boy, that shed, it is that refrigeration unit I have in there. It's sized for 1,800 colonies. And he put in a little bit, just to make it work for 3 units. I was over capacity, and those units are working. They're working to keep it cool. So that's a good sign too.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pulling out 105,000 BTUs.
So
that's a lot of heat.
If you had a bigger building, what would those 3 be able to cool, colony-wise or box-wise?
They would be able to cool. Good question. Over capacity about 18,000 BTUs, and we're doing a calculation on 48 BTUs per colony. So take 48 divided by 18,000. I'd be able to put that much more in.
Oh, okay. I thought it would be more. I thought. Let's say you had you have 1,800 in there right now, and if you had those 3 units, I was thinking, maybe you'd increase it by You know, maybe you could put 2,500 in there or something. You know.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be able to get over 2,000. I think that'd be pretty much my top end. But that's my top end anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's definitely my top end. I mean, 1,800 was a lot. I'm gonna have to put on an expansion on the shed to be able to handle 1,800 for capacity wise. Yeah.
Doug was telling me someone in Saskatchewan selling 1,200 colonies. It's like a turnkey bee business in Saskatchewan.
What's the name?
He didn't say. He did not say what it was.
Hope they're alive.
Hopefully they're alive.
It's 1,800 colonies just need, or 1,200 colonies just.
Just add beekeeper. Hey, I could make it very manageable. One season, I'll come out winter with 17 colonies. It's no doubt. every year, I could go in with 1,800, come out with 17 every year. No problems. Hey, Charlie, how's it going?
Good, good.
Good to see you.
The only thing is, Ian, is that you're going to have to buy a smaller broom so Bob can come up there and brush the bees down the little always put in there.
Yeah.
Actually, I went to the dentist and I went to the hardware store and I bought a smaller broom so I can fit it down the alley. Yeah.
I looked at that, man, and things are awful narrow.
Yeah. I should maybe have made it a bit bigger, but I wasn't sure. Like I chalked everything out and I wasn't quite sure. I could fit another 2,000, or excuse me, I could fit another 200 colonies in the shed. So I maybe could have made that aisles a little bit wider. That might bite me in the ass because I got to get the airflow down there through there.
Oh,
Get that
yeah.
heat out. Yeah. So I'm going to put fans down just to blow down the aisle just to help move the air. But the coolers, they seem like they're blowing cold air over the top of the stacks, and the ceiling fans, they're pushing it down real nice. So I'll have to wait to see it run for a couple weeks to see if I have it tweaked properly. But it seems to be running all right.
Well, you got the cooling fans going, you know, with the aisles, and you got your fans upstairs, but the piping that pulls it from the outside air and runs it out the other side of the building. What are you doing? Shutting that down while you're running your cooling fans?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm shutting it down to minimal air exchange. So it would be, don't ask me what that air exchange is, but it is basically what keeps the bees, or in a January day when it's cold as hell, I have minimal air exchange and I keep my CO2 level at about 2,000 to 2,500 parts per million. And so I have my dial set at 4, and that's what I have it set at. So I have the same air exchange now. They could be a January day. The bees don't know any different. So that's how I change it.
Doug said, isn't Bar 2 Bee Ranch north of Saskatoon?
Bar 2 Bee Ranch. I'd have to hear the name. I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I don't have enough assets to finance that type of operation.
Pretty risky business. Yeah, it is risky business.
So it's one day maybe when my grandsons are old enough to get out there and sling some bees around, assuming they'll partake.
I have a question. And of course, it's for Ian. You said that you had watched Charlie's show on Friday night, and there was Rick Sutton that was on there, and he's popping in and out. He's, I guess, down in Florida right now. And we were talking about queens. And I had mentioned that, I'm going to be grafting off a VSH survivor that should be 2 years old next June. And she's just a fiend. She was laying sheets of brood. So anyway, got to talking about virgin banks. Have you ever done that or tried that or heard of it?
Not virgin banks, no. Corey Stevens is more familiar with that kind of stuff. That's the reason why I brought him up to our convention to talk about, shipping virgin queens or managing virgin queens, introducing virgin queens. I dabbled with it a little bit, and I just didn't get the success that I wanted to see from it. So we have a straight old rule: is when the queen cell hatches in the nuke and let the bees look after all those conditions.
This is and I understand that, and I probably prefaced the question wrong, but what I was thinking more around the lines of drone production. So you bank a queen, a virgin, and you wait till she gets to sexual maturity. She, obviously didn't fly out to mate, so she just lays a bunch of drones.
Oh,
And man, my wheels have been turning since Friday night, Charlie, when I heard that. And I'm like,
I even got a Saturday morning text about that.
I mean,
I had a guy here locally. He said, "What? He liked the show, but he didn't quite understand all that." And I said, I really didn't understand all of that.
At first, I didn't know what he was saying, but now it makes perfect sense. So, for me, in my case, I have a VSH queen, and I'm going to graft off of her, but and not all the grafts will come from her. I have other queens too, but I want to flood the market with drones, and I want to flood the market with her drones. And
never really thought about it that way before. Boy.
That's a commercial way to do it, I guess.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I was typing. So you're saying bank virgins to get that queen to lay drones?
So you let the virgin hatch, and I think it's 20. I wish Brad was here. He had the numbers. 21 days to sexual maturity. So if you keep her trapped, after 3 weeks, she's going to start, laying blanks, and there you go. You got a whole bunch of drones.
We're going to have a special visitor coming in just a few minutes. Corey's coming.
Oh,
So.
All right. Now, this is my question. Now, I've always heard that when you bank a queen, I'm not sure if that's a virgin queen or a mated queen, that she could. I think it's mated queen. She can only stay banked for so many days, and after that, she loses her ability to lay.
To mate.
To mate. That's what it is.
Could be a drone layer.
It's gonna be a drone layer, but you can't. That's what it is. If she doesn't get out of a mating box because of bad weather for, let's say, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And she'll never get mated quality wise.
No.
All right. So nobody's ever officially answered my question. Are drones from a drone laying queen viable drones for mating other queens?
Ask Corey.
Or are they no good?
I don't think not. They're drones, right? The drone should be a drone. Shouldn't it?
You would think, but everybody eliminates drone laying queens. So could you not create some drone laying queen colonies and just let them populate drones all over the place?
Well, isn't that what the idea behind the drone frames are about? I mean, if you're down and when I go to Georgia down there to Hardeman's, and they've got, I don't know, 1,500 or more mating boxes, that's 3,000 queens, 2 queens to a box. In the back corner over there, they'll have about 6 colonies full of drone frames in there, flooding the area with drones to mate with all them queens and stuff.
So I can take this down. Doug says Barry Brown. Does that name ring a bell with you, Ian?
Barry Brown. No, it doesn't. No.
All right. And DNN Apiaries, Dan says they are viable. And we got Tom here. And nobody else joined until Corey comes in.
There we are.
That's all we got.
I just wanted to chime in real quick because the kids are going to bed. But whether they're viable, if she's a drone laying queen and she's laying those drone eggs in worker cells, then no, they're not going to be viable because they're those small workers, right? Or small drones, right? But if she's a drone laying queen, she's laying in drone cells. Now that's going to be dependent on the health of the colony, which is going to be continually dwindling because you have a drone laying queen.
Yeah, and obviously you need a lot of drone comb to put in those boxes with the virgins that you're trapping.
Yeah. So that's that, right? From my understanding, that's going to be the determining factor on the viability, right? It's like the health of the colony, one, and then also the cell size, right? for that drone laying queen.
It's definitely something to
Got
think
my
about.
brother from another mother coming right now. Hey, Corey.
Hey, Corey.
Here we go.
He's here. I'm out of here.
Boom! Drop the mic.
All right, Todd. So now ask your question to a queen expert here.
So Corey, have you? Well, I'll just say it. Virgin banks for drone production. Have you had any experience doing that or heard of it?
A virgin bank for drone production?
Yeah. So from what I understand is if you hold a virgin, you trap her for, I think it's 14 days, where after that time, she's unable to mate. And then 21 days after that, she's up to sexual maturity. And then she just starts laying drones.
I've not done it. You know, I can't speak from experience on that. I mean, the theory makes sense if she could never mate and she actually starts laying, but I mean, I've not kept them that long. Well, I say that I've accidentally banked them for close to a month before, but then they open mated like normal.
Huh.
After
I
a
don't
month?
know. Yeah, it was about 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
But it was some hopelessly queenless frames that I'd put her on, you know, so they really didn't have a choice. But they seem to operate as normal, but it's not. I don't think that's the norm, you know. But the thing is if you did that, you'd almost have to clip it, Todd, so she couldn't get away.
Well, yeah.
Most of the drone production I've done are overwintered colonies that are tested, you know, to where they're in really large colonies because they'll make, you know, quite a lot more drones.
But it is a possibility though, right? I know there's guys doing it. So
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. As long as she can't lay fertilized eggs, that's all she's going to do is lay drones. So yeah.
So go over the numbers again. When is it that typically a queen that can't get out, how long does she have to get out to get mated? Is it 14 days?
I've heard all kinds of figures, but you know, from my experience, that's where I went down the virgin intro rabbit hole. Is I think that the issues with that aren't that the queen loses the ability to or urge to mate and lay. Oftentimes, it's just that the bees reject her. You know, like if they've started queen cells or whatever, they'll throw her out. Oftentimes.
So it's nothing to do with her physiology at all. It's just how the bees accept her then.
It's the way, from my experience, that seems to be the case. You know, I've done them a lot longer than you're supposed to, and they would still work.
Mm-hmm. So let's just say whatever the number is, let's say it's 14, 16 days. And then the 21 days to sexual maturity is 21 days after that, right?
I would say so. That would be my guess. Yeah.
So you're looking at 37 days at the most in that example. And then
That can't be right? Because after 16 days, she hatches and then she walks around in the colony for about a week. And then she flies out, right? So it'd be about 21 days from the time she was laid.
Urged, yeah.
So that's the only thing I don't understand. Is it 20 plus 21 days after the period of the time she can't mate successfully? I don't know. Or they run concurrently?
I don't know. I've never done anything like that. You know, I've heard theories of people doing stuff like that, but it's not something I could speak from experience on.
You didn't know you was coming to a test, did you?
I didn't. Yeah.
While Corey's on, I got a question. I don't know whether it was Brad or who stated this, but all right, introduction of a queen, and like I had this spring, where I pulled the queens out. I left them queenless for 5 days or whatever it was, and got my virgin queens in. I went through frame by frame, shake all the bees off, cut all the queen cells off and everything like that, put that virgin in there. And because, everything has been over the time, the success rate's high. I'll say 90% as far as acceptance. But now, I think it might have came from over there, the guy from England or over there, but he said, take that queen that you got in there that you want to get rid of. Don't pinch her, put her in a queen cage, cap it off, put her in the hive, let her stay in there for those 5 days. All right. All her eggs that she had laid is too old to turn into queen cells, and they're not going to make queen cells because her pheromones are in there. And then when you get your new queen, pull her out, let's say for 24 hours or 48 hours, and then put your new virgin in there. Have you ever tried it doing that?
No, I've not. I mean, it seems like it would probably work majority.
Well,
of
I
the
mean, I'm looking at it took, I was hours, going through them combs one by
Yeah.
one, smashing cells and stuff. And I'm like, man, what a work saver that would be.
Yeah. Now, at certain times, I don't know exactly what percentage of the time, but there's been times where I've caged a queen for an extended period, and it's almost like from her not walking around on the combs that sometimes colonies would start emergency cells anyway, even with
All right.
her in there. Now that may be 10% of the time, 20% of the time. I don't know exactly, but
I presume, I mean, when it comes to pheromones, I always thought it was just smell, but also it's passing by the antennae. So
yeah,
maybe because they're not touching her antennae, that her pheromones are dissipating throughout the hive.
it could be. It's more complex than that too. Like, she has pheromone glands on her tarsi, on her foot pads, and so if she's not able to walk around, that's oftentimes where you'll see a queen. People will say a queen right cell builder, where you pull brood above an excluder and the queen's below it. Well, they'll start cells above it. I used to think you had to have like a cloak board or something to physically shut that off, like you were talking about, where they couldn't touch any or pass pheromones. But if you have a lot of brood on the other side of that excluder, I think her not being able to walk on those brood combs, they think that's queenless. So whenever I talk about a queen right cell builder, sometimes I'll make air quotes because like half of the box is queen right.
Now you're using a double screen, right? At that point in time, right?
You can, but you can get away with just a simple excluder too. That's why I was saying, minimally, they can still pass pheromones back and forth, but she's not able to walk up there. It's really odd. It's like kind of like a 2 queen colony. Have you seen people write about those?
I've had one before.
Okay. There's 2 colonies with separate queens working the same stack of supers, but there's an excluder in between them. And it's weird. It's like neutral territory.
I've had 2 queens in the same hive without an excluder, and they're just working and doing their thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I've seen that like with super seizure and stuff, but this is like 2 separate colonies, with newer queens that were working the same stack. They call it a 2 queen production setup or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've had one where I had, let's say, 2 single brood chambers side. Well, Brad Hogg did the same thing. 2, like Ian, when they do those multiple nukes up there, you got a queen right box here and a queen right box here, and you got a queen excluder, and then you'll have a honey stack going right straight up.
Exactly.
And both of them will feed that honey stack.
Yep, that's just like a 2 queen setup. I think there was a guy that lives south of me. He's an entomologist that has written in Bee Culture, American Bee Journal about that. But it's that whenever that queen can't walk or go over there, some degree of it spread through her foot pads, and if she can't walk over there, it's odd. It's like they just assume that's a separate colony.
I've not heard that. So pheromones is passed by antennae and the foot pads. And is pheromones actually a fragrant or a smell or anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, it's not something I think we can smell, but I think
no, but I mean, I always thought when I first started out, pheromones was just
right.
Bananas. That's the only one I smell, the bananas. Then you know it's getting real.
Yeah.
No, I don't even smell that. But I always thought pheromones was like perfume, and that was it. But then I found out, because of a double screen board, is because they touch with their antennae. Now you're telling me also the footprints actually put stuff on the comb.
Well, how many times have you released a queen out of a queen cage, and the queen goes down in the frames, and all the other bees go in and out of the queen cell, and they're still on the queen cage, right? Because that's the strongest smell of the pheromone at that point.
Yep, totally. And it's more than just a smell. Like it inhibits their ovaries to where they're not, that's what keeps laying workers is actually the queen's pheromone that they spread around. It actually shuts their ovaries off. So it has a lot of, it's a lot more than just a smell for sure.
Well, what about the brood odor when you're, if you keep like I do a queenless cell builder, you keep adding brood frames to it.
Yeah.
Is that because of her footprints are on that wax along with the brood odor?
It could be maybe a combination of both. Yeah, it could be. Well, like if you have a laying worker, and you start feeding brood frames in there, a lot of times you can actually get it to accept a different queen by adding brood to it to where it shuts off the laying workers. So I don't know. It's a bizarre thing.
This might be a money-making opportunity. Anybody that wants to smell the banana pheromone, suit up, come down for $5. I'll let you experience that one time.
Hey, if I could go back, I found this back and forth Brad and I were doing last, well, I think it was last weekend or Saturday. So here's what Brad said. Graph from your F0, 16 days later that, the virgin emerges, cage her for 21 days. Then she lays a drone egg, then 24 days for that drone to emerge. And then 14 days to sexual maturity for the drone too. So I think I was kind of getting mixed up with the queen maturity timeline, and I completely forgot about the drone timeline. And then he says, well, he can't do it up there. Ian would know this because that's 75 days, and here comes winter, right? I mean, they have a short, compact season. Yeah. So that's why he says he wouldn't do it, because he has no time.
Well, summer's only 90 days up there where Ian's at, I think.
Mm-hmm.
About 3 months, I guess. It seems like it.
Yeah, it feels like it's less than that sometimes.
I know. Usually you're bringing your bees out into the snow and you're taking your bees out of the snow back into the barn.
I think
we'd have to, Todd, we'd have to drop drone frames in our colonies in April and get the drones laid, then they emerge in May to catch the queens later in May. That's what our time schedule will be like. Yeah.
And everything has to fall into place for you too. Otherwise, because you don't have any time to waste.
It'd be a sacrifice of the colony because you're dedicating to drones. But I think that's your point. Try to get the drones. Yeah. But you could do it later on in the summer too. Just saturate the area. I've been thinking about doing that too. Like I have these Golden West queens, and then I have these other VSH queens that Ray Oliveira sent up for me. And I was thinking, well, now I have them up here, so why don't I do some breeding of them? But I'm just so damn busy. I can't seem to get all these ideas I have in winter and actually translate them into, a practice through summer. So we're going to put it through winter to see if we actually like them. And then we're going to grab the ones that we like and then maybe have a little mating area to do that. So we might want to saturate with drones that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a question for you, Corey.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. You talk about viruses with your viral loads in your colonies are low because, I guess it's because your colonies are managing the mites, right? That's the idea behind it.
Well, it's more complicated than that, but yeah, that's the basic idea. It's the traits that give the bees an edge for mites, which would be loosely called VSH, SMR, whatever you want to call it, hygiene. But the thing is it's a hygienic removal. This is why I thought UBO was going to be the next big thing, which that's a whole separate topic. But I thought that the reason my bees had low viral loads, I thought that they were able to just throw out sick pupa. So like back in the day, I would go through colonies and see deformed wing virus, see a lot of it. And I would just switch the queen out with one of these VSH queens. This was back when I was getting them from Tom Glenn. And then if that colony wasn't too far gone, if it didn't crash and burn, I would go back 6 or 7 weeks later, maybe a little less, and there was nothing. There was no deformed wing virus in there. If that queen took over and her workers took over, so I knew they had some kind of viral resistance, but I couldn't articulate it. I didn't know what it was. But I think what it was is they were just throwing out sick pupa, because they'll do that all the time. And if you think about it, if they're throwing out sick pupa, whenever the pupa emerges and it cleans out its own cell and it's a nurse bee, what does it do then? It starts feeding everybody else. So its typhoid Mary is out feeding all the babies. And, like Zach Lamas's work showed that through trophallaxis, that could pass deformed wing virus. So I think they're throwing them out in the weeds before they take over nurse duties. They're ejected from the colony. And so I think that physically breaks that cycle of everybody passing deformed wing virus to everybody. Now, this is just theory, but it seems to make sense. And I've had some viral data, to back it up, that I'd sent Randy Oliver. That's been some years ago. But that's my theory behind it, is that they're just throwing out sick or high viral load pupa before they're spreading it to everything else. All the new.
I'll tell you my experience here. I have a neighbor beekeeper, and he's kind of like a closed little operation. He started from nothing. He's building up. He's a smaller guy, very dedicated, smart guy, and he's brought in some bees from a neighbor who seems to be high in VSH or whatever. It scores really high in UBO. Like this breeder, I think he was telling me, is scoring up around 90 or something, and that's pretty high. Yeah. So he's selling me these queens. I'm asking him, or I won't. Okay, so he's selling me these queens, and I'm making these bulk bee splits with them. So I make up 25 bulk bee splits, drop these queens in there, and I come back, check for emergence to see what's going on, and just a terrible laying pattern. I'm like, fuck. And then go on the next one, terrible laying pattern, just spotty, boom, shotgun. And the next one, these queens are no good. They didn't mate well. But then I went through all 25, and they're all doing the same thing. So I was thinking, well, he wouldn't have sold me poorly mated queens, because on his inspection within his mating yard, they would have looked good. He wouldn't have sold me poor queens. But they're in my colony, and they're shooting this terrible brood pattern. And then the next brood rear comes around, like the first hatches out, the second cycle comes around, and the brood nest starts to clear up, starts to become more solid. And the third time, before we hit winter here, it was a decent little nest. Now there's these sexy little nukes going into winter. I was wondering, I was asking, like my colonies, I can't get rid of viral load. It's high on everything. I can't shake it. It doesn't matter what my mite counts are. Viral loads are through the roof. I should just quit testing because I know what's going to be. It's just through the roof. And I'm asking him what his are, and he's, I haven't really actually tested for a virus. I've never actually seen deformed wing virus in sac brood or nothing like that. So I was thinking maybe these high scoring UBO queens are not necessarily pulling out for Veromate, but they're maybe identifying the high viral or the sick brood. And that's kind of what you were saying here, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. The thing is like you'd have to watch is like when you'd put those queens in, like it takes, it would have to be her brood that was doing that. So it would have to be, sometime after you put it in. I don't know exactly how long, like if you do a Harbo test, I think John wants that queen to be laying in there for 7 weeks, because then you're actually measuring the response of those workers. If the queens weren't in there that long, I would almost think it, maybe if it was yard specific, if it wasn't maybe nutritional stress.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Brood patterns look like shit, whenever the nutrition just shuts off and they just don't look great. And then, sometimes they'll even look queenless. Like one of my buddies here that keeps commercially, he called, he's like, I just need to bounce this off of somebody. He's like, I think I have an entire yard that's queenless. I was like, no, there's no way. I go, why don't you hit them with some syrup or hit them with some feed and then check them again in a week or a week and a half. And he fed them, and he said everybody started laying again. So it was just extreme, either no pollen coming in and or nectar, or just, nutritional stress. That'll make your brood patterns look like trash sometimes, and then as soon as it kicks back on, it straightens out.
Yeah, I'm jumping the gun on that. Of course I am, because she's freshly laying, and these are my bees, not her bees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet it was. I would guess nutritional stress and less. Were they fresh? Well, you said they were bulk bees. They weren't.
No, there's no brood in there. They're all
Yeah.
bulk bee splits.
Did
Yeah.
you feed them hard, or was there a big flow on?
It was, yeah, it was probably, I bet you it was nutritional stress. Boy, isn't that interesting? I drew that line, I drew that connection between his UBO
Yep.
and performance over the queens, and I'm making that connection when it actually wasn't true.
It was your
There's
bees.
a, yeah, there's a word for that, isn't it? There's like, you want to see something, or you try to draw conclusions by wanting to see that
Yeah.
outcome. That's exactly what I did there.
Well, I mean, I see where your mind was going with that, because that's what everybody would do right off the bat is go, well, what's the variable? I just put his queens in there. That's the variable.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
But sometimes it's
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Now
And
I feel like an outright fool asking you that question because
no,
because of course it's not her bees. It's her bees that do the work. It's not the queen that does the work.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have to be in there a while. Now, if they had been in there 7 or 8 weeks and you started seeing something like that,
Yeah.
like I still look at nutrition oftentimes, but those queens, I blame them for a lot of stuff.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
helps out.
So anyway, I want some of your queens still. I don't know how hard. I suppose it's going to be
Todd's
impossible
coming
to
up
come
in
across the border,
February.
certainly.
So Corey, send them to Todd. Todd will smuggle them across the border.
Yeah, I'll tape them to my body and every other area, and we'll be set.
He'll go through the thing and he'll think he's got a bomb on him, and it's just a bunch of queen bees wrapped around him.
It's just bees.
I don't think
You have to call them the C4 bees for Corey 4.
That's just doctor's orders. Don't pay attention. Nothing going on here. Just doctor's orders. Leave me alone. Let me go.
What
I brought in those VHS queens from Ray Oliveris, and he just wanted to see how they produced in a honey producing situation. And boy, I have honey up here. And same with the Golden West queens. Golden West queens produced honey. I'm not sure about the mite tolerance on them because they still had mites, so I put them through the whole cycle of treatment and everything. I'm going to see. My theory is if they, I'm struggling with mites anyway, so the ones that are going to make it through winter will be the ones that can manage the mites properly. We'll see how they fare. The VSH queens, they sure held back. Boy, they didn't produce as much honey. Really? Probably two-thirds of the honey. They were just kind of, I wouldn't pick them for breeders, but they're pretty good as winter nests right now. So. They're shaking low with mite counts this fall. They still went through the mite treatment program. We'll see how they go through. Yeah, but it's not like they went with 0 mites or anything like that.
Okay, those were from Oliveros.
Yeah, straight from Ray's. He has He's involved with some project out there. He calls them California VSH. I think that is something to do with high-low queens.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking whenever you said that, because I was trying to pinpoint where they came from, because they've got like a USDA poll line that they've been working on, but those were
tied with the government somehow. Yeah,
those were the Hilo bees. Those were from Hawaii, where it was like USDA, Arista Bee Research, I think, was involved. Whoever, I thought. Who was it? Somebody owned it and then was bought out. Was it Dave Thomas? And Dave Thomas sold to Oliveros or somebody. Somehow there was like a divorce, basically, and like some of the colonies stuck with the USDA, some of them stuck with. So I bet what Ray had, I bet it was out of that program, which I don't think they're running it now because it like changed hands. Or maybe Ray's running it. That could be it. I think the USDA and Project Apis M, I think, was involved in that too.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to, next time I talk to Ray, I'll have to ask him exactly where they come from. But he just wanted a little bit of honey feedback from him to see how they produced honey.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, it'd be interesting to see what those do. Like the stuff I've got is genetically unique, but our breeders, whenever I started testing, I think it wasn't in before 2020, I was just a VSH hoarder. And then in 2020, that's when Dr. Harbaugh taught us how to measure this stuff. So each year, you know, most of my breeders test top tier, but I would always find some that were just even artificially inseminated queens that wouldn't cut the mustard. And it seems like every year it's gotten a lot tighter. We did mite washes alongside them this year, late season, like first week of September. And it was kind of crazy to see the Harbaugh scores alongside the mite washes. And, you know, like the breeders have gotten to where the vast majority of them are absolutely top tier. And
how hard is it to maintain those traits? Like if you sent, let's say I brought these queens up from Ray, I'm going to put them in. I'm going to only take the ones that I like, of course, and I'm going to throw them into breeders and that. Am I just fooling myself? Like what I
no,
said earlier, confirmation bias. Is that going to rule the day? Or am I just wasting my time? Or does this really have to be focused in to make it work? Or can you just kind of throw it in and throw it in and throw it in?
I would do a little bit of both. Whenever you throw it in, see how much it makes a difference, because it depends on the queens too. Like there's some queen lines that don't want to hold it. Like I've had queens that I inseminated with nothing but my drones, and they were 0% VSH. Like they got their asses handed to them. It's like those certain lines won't perpetuate it. They won't hang on to it. Like if you kept inseminating it, you could probably force it in there. But there's, on the other hand, there's certain lines that even if you open made them a couple generations, they'll still test. So it depends on what you're starting with and what kind of breeding program it was. That makes a big difference, and what queen lines you got. You know, because if you got like one of mine and made a whole bunch of queens from it, well, 10% of my breeders don't score great. So if you made a whole bunch of queens out of that one queen that wasn't going to score high, you know what I mean? Then you're going to have mediocre results. That's why I started or stopped selling breeders that weren't tested yet. And now I'm just working with, like, I've got a deal going with Chris Werner where he's going to make some queens out of my breeding stock. And it's only from breeders that have run a whole season and we've tested them. The mite loads were ridiculously low. You know, they're suppressing mite reproduction, and then we'll produce queens out of that. Now, how are they going to do? Because they're open mating with no VSH drones.
Yeah.
So, you know, that'll kind of be an experiment until we can get yards set up that are really pushing it. But to answer your question, I don't think it's a waste, you know, because if you really get some concentrated stock and you run a whole bunch of them, you know, if they do test high, in theory, those drones should be nothing but VSH drones, and it definitely sticks in your area if you get something that's worth having. One of the guys in Michigan that was running some of my bees, if I understood him correctly, he ran nothing but my queens in a yard for a year or two, and then moved all of them out, moved other colonies in, and was open mating them where that apiary was for a few years. And those daughters that were coming out of there were testing, surprisingly. So,
Well,
I mean, once you get it stuck in your population, you can keep it in there, but nobody wants to do the testing or knows how because it's so new. You know, if you do the testing, it's just like a shot group. If you keep getting rid of the ones that are no good or requeening them and then just concentrating on stuff that tests higher, which you guys are working towards, it's not a pipe dream. You can absolutely make good progress.
so Corey, I have some of your genetics here via Mark Miller, and I got them last June, June of 23.
Okay.
You know, I only have a couple of left. I don't know what happened to the other ones, but I have one in particular that has been washing zeros
Okay.
within the last 2 years, basically, was since June of 23, except for one time it washed a 1. The other one that is still sticking around has washed, I think the highest it got was 3.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah, so it's been going, and I've not done the Harbaugh test.
Yep.
On it.
That's the one thing I was going to bring up.
Yeah. But so going back to what you just said about the guy in Michigan, how long did he leave those colonies there and then move them? Was it a year, you said?
Yeah, he had the apiary there for multiple seasons.
Oh, multiple. Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just 1 year. So
No, I don't believe so. Yeah.
okay. And it takes a while.
It does take a little bit to stick. And what I was going to mention too is like in relation to mite loads, like they're generally a lot lower, but like with our Harbo testing and washes that we did here, the highest 100% suppressed mite reproduction queen that we found, the highest wash, I think it was 18. So
Wow.
that's something you want to think about. Now that was a freak. Most of them were way below threshold, but sometimes you'll have a bunch of mites coming in, and if you take a wash, you'll think, "Oh man, that queen doesn't have what it takes." Whereas if you did a Harbo on her, you'd see that there's mites coming in, but they're shutting down mite reproduction. So there was somebody else in one of the EPIC programs where I was teaching insemination up at Penn State. He said, I've had a few of your queens that were virgins that I got. He's like, this is her second year, and she's always looked great. I never treated or did anything. He goes, and then I did a wash. I think this was in July, later July. And he goes, it was like 20. He goes, I was appalled. I'm like, well, you should do a Harbo assay on it, And I was like, here's where the instructions are. And he emailed me back. He's like, my mind is blown. Like they had mites coming in, but I couldn't find reproductive mites in there. So, that's something like washes are a good tool to look at certain things, but it's sometimes more complex than that too.
Yeah. No,
So I guess the real question is, what's the over and under on how many queen cages Todd can smuggle to Canada in his rectum?
well, I'm sorry to disappoint whoever they're going to, but not very many.
Don't bring him here. I won't accept him.
Maybe
Could you imagine the Canadian customs on that X-ray?
I think if you bet one, then you're doing pretty good.
Brian says 12.
No, that's way off from a dozen.
Well, Ian,
only on the stream, guys, when you get comedy like this.
Ian, I know you would like to get some queens up there for a trial, and I think we're getting closer to that because I'd mentioned that I was working on a couple other possibilities that would be international too, to where I'd have to do all the exact same type of testing that I would do anyway. So I'm kind of getting to the point to where I'm pushed to it. Like this last year, I wish I could have, but I couldn't make enough queens to satisfy the state, and I was kind of in a pinch with leaving the day job. So I think I haven't forgotten about you.
Don't let me add to your workload. I was going to ask you how things are going because you stepped away from your job and now you're a full-time queen rearer. So how's everything going? Obviously you're doing very well. You're quite busy.
I haven't lost a lot of weight, so I'm still eating okay. It's been good. I had some major projects I was working on. I wrapped up an excavation project. Like I had my bee building built, before COVID even, and I had to do a lot of dirt work before I could run my water, power, and internet in there. So it's just kind of I've been working on infrastructure projects, but queen production was good. Honey was pretty good this year. I've got some cool opportunities popping up. I don't want to say too much about it because, nothing's been signed or anything, but I don't know. It's going well. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's farming.
You guys can meet at the border and just pass the queens over the fence, right?
Fly a kite.
Meet in the middle of the St. Lawrence Seaway.
If it's anything like the southern border, you can sit there and pass.
Canoe across.
Fly a drone over there.
Peabody's apiary says, how do we know that mites don't tend to gravitate to a weaker colony in a yard? And they all go there, always wondered that.
I think hive beetles do that, but I don't know that Varroa do. They could.
Hive beetles wipe one colony out and go to the one right next to it and wipe that one out too.
Yep. And they just know, like, if something's queenless or something's weak, they're like jackals. Now this is hive beetles. The Varroa, I don't know that I don't know. Maybe they do. I mean, it could be more complex than we're giving them credit for, but I just feel like there's there's certain characteristics that definitely give colonies mite resistance, and there's some that are definitely susceptible. And one of my complaints about using only the alcohol wash for selection for mite resistance was I think that inadvertently sometimes you might be, and maybe this is a good thing, you might be selecting for colonies with like a low robbing threshold, because I think a lot of times when there's a lot of drift or robbing, that's whenever you see a mite load come into your colony. So some of the low load colonies may just be good neighbors and they're not out pillaging
I'll tell you
other
what,
colonies.
my best colony is the one that's so pissed off that I don't want to go in it.
Yeah.
If I start, I always leave that one for last, and it's always the one that's like, I don't want to mess with it. I leave it alone.
Not worth it.
But it thrives, right? And it makes you wonder, how can a colony live in the wall of somebody's house and be fine, but you put them in a Langstroth hive and all of a sudden you got issues?
Yeah.
It's
I don't know. It could be the Tom Seeley thing. Like he was speculating that some of those bees that he was messing with, like if they were in a smaller cavity, it would make them swarm more and stuff, you know. And he felt like that gave them an edge. Whereas if they got more space around them, maybe they're pitching less swarms and raising more brood, possibly. You know, that may have put them over the edge. I don't know.
mite reproduction facilities.
Yep.
But
Hey, I just got an idea. Maybe you got Corey, you could contact Richard Gere, because I think he's moving to Canada and he's had experience in smuggling things. So, just a thought. I don't know.
Well, you know, I have to say, I think that we'll be able to do it, you know, all paperwork filled out and everybody's happy. And that way I don't have anybody knocking on my door later. We already sent moonshine up there.
it made you, right?
That's our luck.
I was questioning because it wasn't coming up, and I was like, I put it in Corey's hands. Yeah, I'm sure as hell not going to see this.
Ian was convinced I drank it. I still remember watching that video. I'm like, oh, I wonder where that other box is. And yeah, he didn't know there was 2 boxes. It showed up, what, a week later or something like that.
Yeah, come a week later, I was certain you drank it on me. Yeah, that was pretty strong stuff. I tell you, that was pretty good stuff.
What did the kit say? It had 3 levels in it, didn't it?
Yeah, one was what was one? 3 levels. First one was to, you know, if I had a bit of the shakes, and the second one is to give me courage when things were. I think the second one was bourbon. You know, when things are going off the rails, have this, and when things are completely, you know, done, here's some moonshine you can finish it up with. Forget the guy's name that gave it to me. Tom. Yeah. So anyways,
that was a good gift.
Roy says, Corey, who in Michigan are you talking about?
It's the Sustainable Beekeeping group up there. I think it was James Lee that had that happen, where he'd kept some of mine in a spot and moved them. You'd have to ask him for the details. But they're the ones that came down and helped me test. That's where we layered wash data over Harbo data, and that was the biggest sample size that we did. Like with volunteer labor, usually it's 35 or 30 colonies. We did about 45 plus colonies here, you know, and several of them were breeders.
Doug says he has an advantage of not having a beekeeper within 40 miles of him.
That's a good advantage.
We're a little tighter than that. Yeah, we have neighbors. Yeah.
I don't have anybody of size that's close to me. There's a lot of Pharaoh colonies and there's a few backyard beekeepers around, but it's not really a great honey production area, so there's not a lot of people fighting to get in here. You know, one of my buddies had a yard. It was about half a mile or maybe a little bit more than that from one of my yards, you know, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, do you guys still have bees over there? He goes, no, that yard was terrible. I'm like, what? That's my best yard. So I'm just used to sad honey production. I'm just more, it seems like it's consistent. It's not strong and fast like Ian's, but I'll have a good pollen flow and enough nectar coming in that I can raise a lot of queens off of. And our fall flows typically pretty decent too. So I don't have to feed a ton, but we don't pull a ton of honey off.
This is the first year that I've actually just fed straight 2-to-1, right? Usually down here it's just 1-to-1 all year round, and this year I tried the Canadian aspect of just plugging them up as much as I could with syrup, and they're alive. At least 17 of them guaranteed for the spring. So that always is my magic number. I could, like I was saying, I could go up to Ian's and have 1,800 colonies, but rest assured, in spring I'd have 17. It doesn't matter what I do. 17 is the number. So, right now I'm at 22, so I still got a margin of error. So
yeah, you're good.
Hit my goal of 17 by spring. We're going the wrong way.
What do you think, Ian? How's your colonies looking?
Or sorry, were you talking to me, Corey?
Yeah, I thought I watched the whole video, but what were you speculating? Some potential issues, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure what to think yet. I'll know in the spring, but we had a kind of a long honey flow, so that took me into September before I could get into my mite control, and I wasn't getting my mite counts down quick enough, and I had just kind of lingering counts. So I did a few things and dropped the counts down. So there's maybe 3 yards I've gone through now that I picked up, put in the shed that I thought maybe looked a bit small, and I think they were compromised by the Pheromite pressure. So whether they make winter, I'm not sure. But the rest seem to be holding their clusters quite static. They haven't shrunk down too much, so that's a really good sign right now.
Good.
There's a lot of beekeepers. I'm not sure how many. We're not sure yet, but I'm hearing reports all across Manitoba, all over, just beekeepers losing them already. They can't even get them into winter yet.
Yeah.
Because of Pheromites.
Man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's across Canada too. So I'm not sure what to. And I hear these reports, and I know I had Pheromites in my bees earlier on, even though I knocked the counts down. And I'm thinking, boy, I'm probably walking the edge. I'm not sure what to think, if they're going to get through or not. But they're hot in the shed. It's taking a lot of energy to cool them down, so that's a good sign. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they shake it off and come out looking great.
Yeah. I don't know. I used Apivar, and it wasn't knocking them down quick enough. So then I was talking to a California beekeeper, and he told me, hey, well, if you don't think it's, when we think our amatraz isn't working as what it should, we mix some thymol in with it just to get the bees kind of all over the place, and maybe to activate the Apivar a little bit more. I'm not sure what it does, but so I put in a thymol product, like off the shelf thymol product, and it dropped mites. Like within a week, I went from 5, 6 to 8% yards. I dropped them right down to counting zeros.
Yes, excellent.
Or 0.3. So it took a week and putting that thymol in, but it wasn't just the thymol. It was the thymol and the Apivar, because I call them holes. My crew goes and they're not paying attention sometimes, and they forget a colony. They won't treat it. So I'll have some that have Apivar in there, some that don't, and I have some with that thymol product in there, and then some that don't. So I'm going through, and we're finding a few of the colonies that missed the Apivar but just got the thymol product, and they're still counting 3%.
Really?
And the colonies that just got the Apivar and missed the thymol, we didn't miss too many that way, but the counts aren't zero. So it seems to be that combination, the synergy between help drop them down. Yeah.
Interesting.
So at any rate, that's my battles. And then we went through with oxalic acid vapor and mopped up the last remaining mites on the bees. So I think they're going into the shed quite low. I'm happy with that. It's just how much damage has been done on the cluster already. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, or the viruses like you were talking about earlier.
The viruses, yeah. And they just, I'm not sure what to make of them. I've listened to one of Randy Oliver's talks, and he's talking away, and and he talks. Sometimes he'll talk about the same thing, and I'll listen to that same presentation again. But he throws nuggets in there all the time. It's like, oh, I didn't hear him say that before. That's interesting. And he got talking about viruses, and he's talking about it's not the virus or the amount of virus in there, it's the accumulated number of viral infections in there. He said it doesn't matter what virus it is, them all together is becoming, you know, the detrimental effect, like all the viruses. That's what I have in my colonies. There's just a huge amount of deforming virus, Sackbrood virus, Israeli acute paralysis virus, the black cell queen virus. I have that through the roof. You know, it's just high level all the time. And I think that maybe is one of the things that is catching beekeepers that are like, whoa, you know, mite counts aren't that bad, but my colonies are falling apart. I have the sneaking suspicion it's the virus and maybe some nosema in there, and then a bit of mite pressure in there, and all coming together.
Ian, how much of your comb do you cull every year?
Not as much as I'd like, but I do mix comb in. Yeah, we had I had a bad winter 2 years ago, and the wax moth took quite a bit of that old comb away, and then I burnt some more, and then we replaced a whole bunch of new fresh stuff in there. So that was a forced cull. But I try to bring like 1 or 2 frames, especially with the splits. I'll have 4 fresh frames into the splits, and they'll go into the brood production. Yeah,
because I had a theory earlier in this year. Was Brad and I were sitting here talking one night, and we were talking about how it seemed like when you first start beekeeping and everything's brand new, it wasn't really an issue to overwinter those first year colonies to the next year. It's after year after year, it seems to get worse. And I was just speculating that it's because it's all brand new equipment. You would have lower viruses, lower everything in your comb, right? Because it just hasn't been out there as long. So that was kind of one of the things that I was contemplating.
But the other thing also, just to play devil's advocate with that, you're buying a fresh colony from somebody, supposedly it's disease free, and you keep it 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden that queen gets old, and then all of a sudden, you know, you start getting the Pheromones, and it dies in about 3 years. Could be that too, right?
Right.
But I'm not arguing the new equipment part, though. I think that's important.
Do you know where those frames are that you treated with Formic? Because, you know, I think there's information out that Formic kind of cleans the comb. And you could test. I think you could test it. So, you know, get some of those frames and get frames that you didn't, or frames that came from a high disease level colony, and, you know, see what's what.
Yeah, I did mark those yards, so I am tracking them through the shed. So many variables, though, you know.
Oh yeah.
Those Formic colonies, they also sat on buckwheat, so they have some buckwheat honey in there, so that could be like a detrimental effect. And it's confirmation bias, like what I asked Corey earlier on. What do I want to see in my bees? Well, this is what I'm seeing. This must be the reason why, right? Confirmation bias, I think, gets me more times than not.
I say go to the store and buy some Kraken and just relax for a couple months. Everything will be fine.
It's not that season yet, though.
Getting close, though. Getting close.
Yeah.
Eggnog.
Yeah, I don't think I've cycled my comb out enough, just because the last year or two I haven't really sold any nukes. You know, a lot of times that's a good way to get rid of some comb and cycle some out. But I may start.
But are you kicking the can down the road doing that? I mean, with what, you know, if you like what Bob Binney was saying earlier in the year about the buildup of disease and chemicals in the comb, and now you're selling it to another beekeeper, and you're just really. Now he keeps it for 5 years, right, before he sells his nuke to somebody else. So is it really coming out of service, or is it just getting recycled? You know,
yeah, you're just passing your problems on, probably.
Kicking the can right on down the street, right?
Yeah.
So, in regards to chemical contamination, I did tests on my wax 2 years ago, and then I also tested a number of years ago because I had a heavy loss. So I started blaming those damn farmers. So I started to, so I tested the wax and the pollen and the bees just to see what kind of chemicals in there. And the highest chemical in my wax was the Apivar that I was treating with.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So, you know, I don't
Well,
think
all
the
right.
wax is as dirty. Well, for me anyways, there wasn't anything to worry about.
Mhm.
Making assumptions, right? It's that, you know, the colony's dying. Well, what's the problem? It's, you know, that guy's the problem. He's caused me trouble.
Yeah.
You know, I think
I
the
think it's
disease
this guy.
is this thing. well,
When
well,
my colonies
no.
die, I just say it's this guy.
Or Mother Nature, you know, just the accumulation of viruses. Well, he has a gut infection. The bees have a gut infection. Pheromones are in there. There's all this disease that is festering that we can't really see unless we test for it. So,
Yeah.
and then, you know, we add the effect of incoming chemical or nutritional stress, like Corey was saying earlier about the bees. Maybe that was one of the issues. If all these factors coming together, we can't make heads or tails of what's going on half the time.
Well, yeah, and then, you know, I was saying at the beginning of the stream, right before you popped on, Ian, was you make a change, right? For me, 6 years in, if I make a change, I don't typically just make one change that season, right? I'll change this. Oh, well, I need to do this as well. So I'm making multiple changes, and then it's hard to pinpoint which change actually made the difference, right? What was it that I did out of the 3 or 4 things that I changed this year that made the difference? So that's one of those things that maybe I need to focus in a little bit more. If I'm going to change a group of colonies with something, then just change those, and then, you know, judge it against, like you do. I mean, you'll have 1 yard to say you're getting formic or whatever, and this is all you're getting, and let's see how that rolls. But no, I usually, I'm going to change this and I'm going to do that. And oh, this new product's out. I'm going to try that. And then the next thing you're like, well, my bees look good until they don't, you know, and then it's like, well, what was it that made that difference? And it just becomes hard to pinpoint, right? So I got to do better myself. But, you know, oddly enough, and I'm not downing any products or anything like that, but that 17 thing, that's truth in my bee yard. So for me, with all, I've tried Apivar, oxalic acid, Appy tablets, you know, I haven't done formic because of the temperature here typically, but it doesn't seem to matter what I do. I end up with the net same result at the end of the year. So it's like, why change anything at that point? You know, it's just like, just let them do. And after, you know, talking to people like Joey and Randy, I noticed your Dirt Rooster hat there. Those guys, for the most part, don't treat at all. And, you know, I've spent nowhere near what Ian spends. I'll say that. But I've spent a ton on buying nukes and queens and all kinds of stuff trying to facilitate repair in my apiary. And at the end of the year, what I've got is a bunch of money I spent and still 17 colonies, right? So for me, as the business side of things, it becomes hard for me to justify spending extra money to end up with the same result. And it's only taken me 6 years to figure that out, guys. So, you know, I didn't say I was a fast learner, but, you know, I definitely need to figure out either a better way. And the first thing I've done is, like, I've separated my colonies, right? I keep a smaller group here, and now I've got the out yard. So now I've got 2 separate apiaries. So hopefully it's not just too many bees in one location. So we'll know that next year, right? How it produces, if I produce more. I should produce more, but we'll see. This was the best year I had honey production wise, but that's not saying much when Ian's getting 100 pounds off a freaking nuke and I'm getting 1,200 off of 50 colonies, you know.
I shouldn't have said anything. I have 1%. I'm going to probably drop off any second here. So just in case I do,
Ian's either got the weakest battery or the best timing ever. I think he's just like, I'm tired of this. I got 1%, guys. I'm out. Bam.
Just in case.
Yep.
Sandy's calling.
Yep. I gotta go. Bigger name on the other line. Bye. Oh my gosh. Well, hey, Corey. I'm glad you popped in at a minute's notice, because Todd was like, oh, you should ask Corey that question. I said, well, I happen to have Corey over here, so I just messaged you. I was like, hey, you want to jump in? Ian's
Well,
over here.
I keep thinking about that more. I think that has to do with certain breeding techniques, Todd, to where it's almost like a form of inbreeding, like to where,
Yeah.
like some people I think would try to get a virgin to lay drones and then collect from those drones and inseminate that virgin.
Oh, yeah.
So like there's all different techniques. The way I did it is probably not advisable by PhDs in general, because they'll try to inbreed or do single drone inseminations to where you get a really, really predictable set. But we
Yeah.
know what bees do whenever there's inbreeding. Like they hate it. They'll eat their young over it.
Yeah.
So I took the opposite approach, but I always have a risk of having, whatever percentage that weren't the trait set that I'm after. But yeah, the more I thought about that, I bet that's what they were trying to do, Todd.
Yeah. I just, I want to pass the traits on more around here as much as I can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all open mating. I'm not in artificial inseminating anything. I don't have those skills, and I drink too much coffee in the morning to do that. So,
I understand.
Just a way to put the good vibes out around the area and see, because every year there's always a couple of nasty hives, and we all know that.
Yeah.
The queen lays eggs. The temperament comes from the drone. So,
That's what I hear. I don't know for sure. It could be.
I get terrible queen return for open mating here. That terrible. They just don't come back. Whether it's dragonflies or birds or what it is, I don't know. But they just don't make it back.
I think
except for on that angry hive, right?
Yeah.
That one.
Well,
Always making it back.
I could pour gasoline in that thing and it'd probably still live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Like you guys saw me on a video. I split that thing 17 ways and added queens to everything. That colony with a new queen lived and is pissed off as ever. It doesn't matter. I replaced the queen, so I don't know. Don't know. But hey, I'll just keep stacking boxes on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Corey, how much is the drone responsible for passing on the VSH trait? I mean, how much of that is passed?
Well, I would in the past I would say 50%, but then after seeing some weird things, I don't know. Like there was one dude that sent me some virgin queens from his stock. I inseminated it with my drones, and that was one of the worst ones we had in a test batch.
Wow.
And that included open mated queens out of my stock. It was terrible. The mite wash was like 52 or 54 or something like that, and there was like no VSH. So it's like the drones contributed 0% to that brood nest. Now, like if you grafted out of it and then inseminated those, maybe a percentage of them would start to stick, but like if I hadn't seen that this year, I would have said 50%. But I think it's more complicated than that. I almost wonder if it's not possibly, and maybe more through the maternal lines, because I've had F2s and F3s out of my stuff that have been open mated elsewhere that we're still testing in certain instances. So I don't know. It's almost like it seems like it has to do more with certain queen lines. They seem to accept it a lot better, or hold it a lot better. And other ones, it's like it's just a no-go.
And then I guess a lot of it has to do with all the other drones she's mating with too. I mean, so I've always wondered this. So let's say the first drone she mates with is from has a VSH mother, and let's say the next 6 or 7 don't have that trait, but then let's say the last couple have it.
Mm-hmm.
So is she going to be laying eggs? She's going to go, is it first in, first out type of inventory thing?
I think that they're constantly moving around. That's
they
why
are.
whenever people would say it's layered, or you would
Yeah.
have Africanized drones, they're seeming out. I don't think it works that way. I think they're
Okay.
just like constantly mixing.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I wasn't
I
sure.
could be wrong. I definitely don't have it all figured out. But it depends on the queen too. Like if the queen was from VSH lines and she mated with 30% VSH drones, like I would think it would have a measurable response. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of ifs in there too, And I don't know, whenever we say VSH, like if you're talking to the academic community, they'll start arguing over what it even means.
Yeah.
Like they started adding more acronyms and stuff. Like I leave it to SMR and VSH. And you can go down the rabbit hole with that. Now they've added like MNR, Mite non-reproduction, LVG, low varroa growth, and I think some of that stuff.
Can just make you a shirt with a rainbow on it that has the SMR VSH plus community.
I thought you just said LPG. How you?
Yeah, I think they're stretching a little bit, and some of that stuff is the same stuff, and some of it's poorly defined, and I don't know. Some of it could be make believe, even I don't know. But I know if you're like how we're measuring VSH, you're technically measuring the bee's ability to suppress mite reproduction. So like you're technically measuring SMR. That's the way I look at it.
Jonathan Bennett asks, so is it possible to have a hive with several different mite control mechanisms? Say one drone passes grooming and another SMR and so on.
Oh yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. The only reason I haven't done like grooming and some of that stuff, like I think they've got grooming down to where you can kind of measure it to some degree. I think that's why I was gravitating towards VSH, is because like John gave a way to measure it. Is it perfect? No. Is there false positives? Yes. Like false positives, and I wish John would talk about it more in his how-to guide, but I think the false positives are if you have just freakishly low mite pressure for whatever reason, you'll get false positives. If you've cleaned your bees up, with Apivar, Thymol, whatever, and then you test and they haven't gotten a mite load, you're subject to false positives. So, it's not perfect, but I think it's a good thing to start from, and eventually they hope to take it to genomics, in the future, to where they just take a sample out of your brood nest and tell you which ones are going to be, VSH or whether it's grooming. But I still don't think we're smart enough to know exactly all the genome and all the sites that we're supposed to be looking at. Ian's back.
He's all plugged in.
So yeah, someone buy him a long charger cord so he could sit in a chair, have it plugged into the wall, and everything's good.
Then he won't have the excuse.
Yeah,
Gotta have that,
Hey Corey, so if a guy was going to sit around this winter and kind of watch the rain fall, if it ever rains in his or her area, how can someone like that watch John Harbaugh? Or does he have videos out? Where can a guy like that find information so he can read up on it?
If you're wanting to read, like I've written a couple blog posts. If you want to watch YouTube or whatever, you can look the Sustainable Beekeepers Guild of Michigan, SBGMI. They put out an interview with John Harbaugh. They've helped me test here before. And I think there was one video where they had me just explaining how to test, what we're looking for, that kind of stuff. Or I would recommend getting it from the horse's mouth too. If you Google Harbaugh Bee Company, it's all reading. I don't think he has videos on there, but Harbaugh Bee Company, if you click on VSH and click on measure VSH, yep, there it is. Yeah, you're,
Brian.
you're getting
Brian's
the
up to
courses
speed.
now. That's Dr. Harbo that came up with that, so that's definitely a valuable resource. And thanks to him, because there for a while, the USDA quantified it, figured out it was a thing, but they never released any instructions on here's how to do it. And Dr. Harbo, which is one of the ones that figured it out at the Bee Lab, he did that after his retirement. So I feel like that was kind of him giving it to the beekeepers to kind of figure it out themselves, instead of waiting on, a breeder or the USDA or somebody to, make it a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm gonna catch up on this stuff. I need to.
And the more you measure it, the more you'll go, interesting. And then you'll have more questions.
I'll crawl into my own rabbit hole.
Yeah. If you need someone to talk to, you know where to find me.
He'll be the one with the tissue sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
No, it is fascinating, and it isn't. It's not snake oil. I mean, it is something you can measure. It is heritable. You can definitely, if you start selecting for it, even if you're open mating, you can make a difference.
I used to live in the Show Me State.
Really, where at?
Opposite of you, in Billings, which is southwest of Springfield.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Had fun back there.
Yeah.
Rode out a tornado and a 100-year ice storm, and everything in between.
Were you down there for the ice storm?
Oh yeah.
I was in St. Louis.
What was that? 2000?
Yeah, I forget what year.
I think.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in St. Louis at the time, so it just we got a little bit of ice, and then it turned to sleet, and then it turned to snow, and then southeast Missouri was a disaster area. All the trees were snapping off from all the weight from the ice. It was crazy. They were out of power for weeks. It was wild.
Yeah. I'm back in California. I kind of miss it, but I kind of don't,
Yeah. You could always come back and visit if you.
One of these days. Yeah. I'm going to try to escape here. Well, I don't know. I'm here for a while. I'll just put it that way, but I'll try to escape when I can.
So
get out.
You're in Loma Vista?
No, I'm in Central California, Clovis, which is right next door to Fresno.
Okay.
Almond country.
Is it?
Yeah. There's almonds right over here, about 500 yards away from me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. I've not explored that area. I'd like to. I've only been around San Diego. I went for the American Honey Producers meeting last December. That was the only time I've ever been to Cali.
Count your blessings.
I don't know. It's pretty. The weather's awesome too.
Well, let me ask you this. So I filled up gas yesterday, and I paid $4.19 a gallon, and that's cheap.
Yeah, you sent me that picture of $6 a gallon the other time.
That's
What's
right.
that?
I say you sent me that picture of the gas station was $6 a gallon.
$5.97. Yeah, it was. Oh,
I think it's it's less than.
Well, I paid $2.89 Sunday.
Did you? That's where I think ours is $2.70, $2.80, somewhere around.
Yeah, $2.74, something like that, $2.75.
That's about what we've been paying here. My wife just bought it yesterday for $2.50 something.
Whoo! That's what I'm talking about.
That's why I save up my points at the Murphy station so I can get that $1 off every now and again.
Yeah.
On 20 gallons. That's it.
In Billings, I'd go to the Come and Go, and it would be $2.05 or something. It was back 15 years ago, so it was cheap.
All right, so here's the real question, Corey.
What do you got?
How long if Varroa's been in the States since what? The late 80s?
Late 80s, yeah.
87.
And all of the major beekeeping studies are on Varroa. What the hell's taking so long? I mean, they cured COVID in like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
They can't kill a Varroa mite in 40 years.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of the problem is that, like, I guess you'd say maybe from an evolutionary perspective, I guess is the best way to articulate it. Like, the European honeybee has not been in contact with the Varroa mite, and except it was late 40s, 50s, something like that. Someone may know. So, I mean, it's not, maybe they had previously, but, you know, it was a completely foreign thing. So I think the majority of the bees that people are working with have no resistance mechanism. And like before that, you know, like, how do you select for it? I didn't know. I just put faith in somebody else that this was VSH. And so I just started hoarding them, and I just didn't treat them to see if they got murdered or not. That was the best way I knew how to do it, which that's kind of cavemanish, but I felt like it worked. But until Harbo released that assay, like, you could do freeze killed brood, but, you know, then there's papers out that said freeze killed brood doesn't select for Varroa resistance specifically. You know, like, you shouldn't see chalk brood and stuff, but
Well, isn't so?
Yeah, but
What,
I would say that 8 years ago, I had Sammy Ramsey. He was in my club 3 months prior to him becoming a PhD. And it seemed like to me, as soon as he proved that, you know, the Varroa was not eating hemoglobin, but was eating the fat body, then it seemed to put all of science on the right road down, you know, to fight Varroa.
but
That they actually, you know, they finally had a better understanding of it.
so is there a mechanism with the testing? I haven't done like UBO testing, right? I haven't done any of it. So this is an ignorance question. But it seems to me that there's factors that would contribute to your score, right? So if you're you freeze a little spot, right? So, and based on how much they clean out is how it scores, right?
That's freeze killed brood. Like UBO, it's supposed to be like stress pheromones, basically. And it's to see if they uncap it or not, to look and if they think something's wrong. But the thing with UBO, like, one of my breeders, for instance, like, we tested her when Kara was here, and they completely shredded the sample. Now I've got Harbo data. She'll be 3 years old in the spring. So I've got multiple year data on her. We tested her again this year just to check the consistency of the test. Goose egg. So now this is only one colony, but other people have complained about consistency with it. And I don't think it's the test is inconsistent. I think the bee's response to it is, for whatever reason.
It would be like
that population in the colony would contribute greatly, right? If it's a box of bees like you see Ian open up and it's just totally jam-packed, they have more bee power to be able to uncap faster than, let's say, a colony here that is light. So how can you score that and know that you're getting an accurate score without having some way to determine, well, this is an average size colony or a very strong colony or something, because that's going to delay the time that it takes them to uncap.
Yeah. So basically,
sorry, go ahead.
All right. So Bob, what you're saying, I think, is spot on that, right? So when you're doing the UBO, you got a time measurement, right? In our time,
2 hours.
But really, what matters is a work measurement as far as the bees are concerned, which is going to vary throughout the year. You know what I mean? And depending on the size of the colony, the health of the colony, right? The nectar flow, all that stuff. So I think what you're saying, if I get what you're saying, is kind of spot on, because you need to not factor it as far as human time is concerned, but as far as bee time on work being done is concerned.
But size-wise, you know, like you're talking about nuke, whenever I tested that colony that went from 100 to 0, it was a double deep almost a year to the date that I tested it before, and it went from 100 to 0. but I've got Harbo data on it that did not change from year to year to year. It was a 4. It never wavered. But the thing is like you would go to a 5-frame nuke. Now, they were probably double stack nukes. They're strong, but some of them shredded it, you know? And I thought maybe something was wrong with that vial as why that breeder didn't respond to it the second time. But the very next colony that we tested was a 5/5, and they shredded it. So it's like, I don't know. There's something inconsistent about it. I do think it's like bees that do score decent on it periodically it seems to have an overlap with VSH somehow. Maybe it's like finding those sick pupa that we were talking about earlier, but it's not exact. And so I don't know. I need to do more testing with it to see. And that was the main one that really jumped out at me, because I didn't just retest a bunch of stuff.
Right.
I just was testing a lot of queens that I'd started earlier that year, and they had been in there 7 or 8 weeks. So
Did you get that applicator thing, the extension?
No.
I know you're really experienced with the test, but I mean, it's so variable as how you're holding it.
Yeah, agreed.
All that stuff.
I'll get one and I'll try it out, but I don't know. I hope it ends up working really well, but it seems to me like there could be inconsistencies in it. And another thing is that she said that it does best during a nectar flow, but whenever we tested the colony and it scored really well, this particular breeder colony, it was dirty, and they were wanting to rob, like we were testing frames and they were wanting to get all the resources off the frame. The year later, it was like a year and a week later, whenever I tested it again, there wasn't a better nectar flow, and that's whenever I got a 0. So I'm like, that doesn't apply either, or else, because she's like, environment has a big deal to do with it, which I can see the logic behind that. Like, think of it this way. Like, if you're detecting unhealthy brood odor, if there's lots of resources come in and you find a patch or a couple cells of brood, they probably stand out. If there's nutritional stress and everyone's stressed and they're starving, it seems like it would be overwhelming. So that's seems like it would make sense, but then my experience in the field, and that's a sample size of 1, so you probably shouldn't base a whole lot on this. It just threw me for a real loop because I know it was the same queen. That didn't match. It didn't match up. It wasn't because of resources, because I got a better score when resources were tighter and a worse score when resources were better. It was like the inverse of what you would expect. So I don't know.
Just tell yourself you still had the cleaner solution in there, so that way you can just wash your hands of the whole situation.
It wasn't that.
I know. I'm just saying,
Yeah, it wasn't. Man.
So maybe next time we get Dr. Underwood on and you on, and we can go down the rabbit hole like we were in Canada, and you guys will like, screw the guy.
I'm game, and I want it to work. Like, I don't, I'm not saying this to poo-poo it, because like I felt like I was like an instant fanboy whenever I heard about it, because I think that the future of combating mites and these issues is breeding. Like, it's the only long-term solution. Like, we still need to work on good miticides and find new ones and have more tools in the toolkit, but it's going to be breeding long-term. And like freeze killed brood, like where you're talking about killing a patch of brood, Bob, and then seeing how quick they remove it. Dude, that's from like the 1950s or 1960s. That is old school. Like, Rothenbuehler at the Ohio State Bee Lab was doing that with cyano gas, which is, I don't know what it is. It's probably illegal now. You probably can't even get it. But he was killing patches of brood.
Well, let's try some mustard gas on them this week.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. But he could tell which ones were going to be resistant to foul brood because they would clean out that dead brood. But I was hoping UBO was the next thing, because it's like the next new approach of like pheromones versus like, okay, here's the difference. You kill brood and then 24 hours later, you go back and see if they took it out. Well, the UBO is stressed brood. It's not even dead at 2 hours. So, like, just from an outside appearance, you're like, wow, that's going to be way more stringent, and the data was showing that too. Now, how big was the data set, and blah blah blah. You can go down a whole nother rabbit hole on that, but that's why I was hoping it worked well, because I'm like, look, you don't have to wait for your mite loads to get higher like a Harbo, to where you get solid results. Like, I was just really wanting it to be awesome.
Maybe your bees just had already uncapped all those cells and recapped them, and they were like, we're not opening those back up.
Right.
We just checked those. Those are good.
Fool me once.
Well, I mean, that's kind of been my whole thing with testing, whether it's mite washes or anything. There's so many outliers that affect your results.
Yeah.
That it's hard to get accurate data. I won't say good data, because whatever data you get it's data. It's right. It's being consistent across the board, right? If you're going to do a mite wash and you're going to just scrape a frame and you don't know how many you got, or the percentages shift based on those numbers, and and that sample size compared to the entire colony is, what does that reflect? And the same thing with the UBO or the freeze kill. If you do that, well, there's things that also, I mean, is the colony just so packed they're getting ready to swarm, so they have a lot of workers in there, so they're working faster? Or is it one that's kind of limping along, that it's the same size sample, but it takes them a longer time to do it, and you just don't, it's hard to quantify that, right? So to get accurate numbers then becomes questionable. And that's kind of where my scientific and my education has taken me to with these tests, is just that if you can't get good data and you can't trust your result, then how good is the test at the end of the day, right? So, but I mean, it's what we've got. So I'm not poo-pooing it either. I'm just saying that's what we've got, but you got to be able to.
Yeah, but if you're coupling that test also with the number one test, which is your winter selection and your survival rate, right?
Yeah.
So that you couple those two together, I mean, I think it's still the right track. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, anything positive that you're doing to help prolong the life of the bee, at the end of the day, it's the best thing we can do, right? Yeah. But and sometimes it takes a test that, let's say that's the UBO isn't the best thing, but it's what we've got. And maybe they say, you know what, if we just use this, maybe this works better, and it'll improve over time. And, that's just stuff that we got to kind of wait out,
Yeah. And hopefully she'll keep tweaking it. I mean, this is like just hit the market, just came out. So it's like version 1.0, really. There may need to be like a slight tweak to it. I don't know. That's not my thing, but I'm hopeful for it. I don't want it to just, go away and never improve. I think like that's why I was excited about it. It was kind of quick and straightforward, and,
right.
So I hope it ends up working out. Really, I do.
Philip's got a good question there.
Let me see.
Yeah, and when you're done with that one, Bob, go back to Doug. It would be 9:45 your time. He had a really good question too.
Well, right. That's the whole basis on, I believe, now don't quote me on this, it's called UBO, or unhealthy brood odor. I thought that whenever a cell is infested with a varroa mite, that brood is stressed and it gives off unhealthy brood odors or stress pheromones. Now, I may be oversimplifying that, but I thought that's why, UBO, I thought it would be effective, basically, is because, it does have a distinct smell. And that's the thing, too, is like we were talking about UBO and freeze-killed brood. Well, dead brood has a distinct smell different from stressed brood, obviously. If something's dead, it's going to smell a lot different than if it's just thick.
You know,
So-
on Bob's topic of, I know there's a question there, but real quick on Bob's topic of new equipment, I wonder if that plays a role in it. You know, if you have all this old stinky comb that's had previously unhealthy brood odor just saturated into it, right? Is that going to minimize the amount that the test is effective versus a nice brand new fresh thing of comb that's never had any of that smell in it? You know, I mean, the bees, I don't know how sensitive they are to that, but
I think highly, or at least the ones that respond to it. That's the whole point of picking those, is that they respond to that, and others are just oblivious to it. You know?
yeah, well, but I mean, as far as whether it was new equipment or
Oh yeah, I
old
think that's a
stinky
good
comb.
theory. That would be cool to test because yeah, if you've had dead brood in it or a bazillion rounds of brood in it,
Mhm.
I'm sure it has a different smell than fresh wax for
Yeah,
sure.
for us, it has a different smell. It stinks.
Yeah, right, and they can smell honey from a mile away.
So Doug at Longman Apiaries, he's north of Ian, but he's in Saskatchewan. And he
Okay.
says, Corey, our yards are isolated. In the fall, if I used your queens in the fall, next year's, the drones would.
I think he means the drones would mate with.
Be from those queens. What would I expect to see?
Well, as long as those queens are the original queens, you know, like if they open mated or this opens up a can of worms. Okay, if you used mated queens per se, if you queened a whole yard or virgin, whatever, if you queened a whole yard with those, all of the drones that they produced would be from the stock of wherever you got it. So if it was my queens, it would be my bees, Randy Oliver's, etc. You know, just because it goes back to the you know, drones have no father, only a grandfather. So whatever your bee's mated with is irrelevant. It's the previous generation that comes out in those drones. It's just a recombinated set of the queen's DNA. So if it was the same queens, you know, all those drones would be from my stock. And that's the thing, is if you're grafting out of something that tests or it seems to carry that trait, it's a beautiful thing. You should see high levels of it even in your open mated queens. But like I was pointing out earlier, whenever I got a queen from a buddy and inseminated it with nothing but my drones, that colony was one of the worst ones that we tested. So it's like the drones are important, but I really think like queen lines are important too. So for instance, if you grafted out of one of those queens that came from me that was a real standout, and then you have the other colonies that are pushing those drones as well, I think you'd have exceptional results. You know, if you went through and tested them, it should test extremely high. But there's variables. Again, I'm oversimplifying it here, you know, for the sake of argument.
Yeah, properly raised queens, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any evidence as to the age of the bee that are more likely to be exhibitors of this behavior?
Yeah, totally. It's before they're foragers. I think it's, you know, somewhere between whenever they're a nurse bee and then they're a forager. And also the age of the pupa matters. So whenever you're starting to pull, like if you're going to do a Harbo assay and you're pulling mature pupa, I like to get the ones that are almost ready to come out, because there's two reasons. You want to give the mite every opportunity to reproduce so you get an accurate score, but also whenever the age of bees that are addressing this issue, they're addressing a specific age of pupa. So typically it's in the purple-eyed phase. So if you have really hygienic bees and they start throwing out some pupa, they're typically white, purple-eyed pupa to just starting to get a little bit of pigment on them. So like if you're doing an assay, I like to get them as the pupa as old as possible. That way it gives your bees an opportunity to address the issue. You know, if you're pulling out white ones, they may have not even got to that one yet. So,
Well, guys, we've been going for my relegated 2 hours of internet time.
Joe,
And
I like
I see that dirt rooster hat. I like it.
Yeah.
Joey's got one too.
Yeah.
Y'all buy from the same store.
Yep.
Yep.
I got 3 of them just like it.
Do you really? I just have the one camo, then I've got a gray one, and I got a brown one too.
Every hat I get gets the sweat band around it, the salt band around it.
I have to wear a hat now. It used to not be a thing, but now I don't. Exactly.
You get
I get a-
Charlie, Charlie's got it too, but he don't wear a hat.
I've got the George. I got the George Costanza. I got the thin patch back here, and then the forest is thinning out, going backwards.
That could be worse.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to end the stream here. I appreciate everybody that came in. Corey, thank you again.
Yeah, happy to jump on. Thanks for the invite. Always good to hang out with you guys.
Thanks for the super chats and super stickers, everybody. And we'll see you on the next stream. Good night. Oh, Corey.